Thank you all so much for coming to our Paranormal and Dark Romance panel, our first one of the day. Yay! All right, thank you so much all of our authors for coming. I'm going to have everyone go down the line and introduce yourself and talk about what you write in your books, and show them off and talk about how great you are.
Yay! Thank you. I'm Michele Roger. I write paranormal, obviously, but specifically my books take place in Michigan. They're based on Michigan urban legends, and it's a witch and a sheriff who fall in love. They get together and then they get together. So the first book is based on the Michigan Dogman, Terror on the Moon, and the second one is The Curse of the Snake Princess, which is based on the woman in white who roams Belle Isle. And this summer, the third book in the series comes out, which is based on the Detroit demon who shows up before cataclysmic things happen. That's me.
Don't want to get too close because I'm a loud talker. I'm Heather Young-Nichols. I write contemporary and paranormal romance. I was actually just explaining to her that I claim both of them because I actually have more contemporary books, but when I hit USA Today, it was with paranormal, so they're both mine. So most of my books take place in Michigan as well. I figured right what you know. This is an Alpha Wolf Shifter series, and this is Gremlins, Goblins, and Gorgons, which a lot of people don't know is Medusa. Somebody knew. I think that's about it, except why am I fantastic, or how fantastic am I?
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. But I try to keep all of my heroines, my tagline is snarky with this, or sexy with a side of snark, and that explains all of my heroines.
I am Sylvia Hubbard, and I write dark romance and high suspense. I say I'm that on paper, so I can be good in life. I have over 60 books available, and I don't do anything else but write. I usually write, I was writing dark, gray kind of heroes before I knew what they were. I just thought they were just crazy men that need love. So that's kind of like my specialty, because I was actually raised by my father in the 80s when, fathers weren't even single fathers then. So I kind of got all my personalities from him, and that makes, my characters just a little bit more lovable, even though you hate them. So.
I'm Halli Starling. I apologize for my voice. I'm still trying to get it back. I am a librarian. I work in publishing now, and I write queer romance across genre. I started with contemporary, and then I got it sucked into a weird story about the occult that I can tell you about later, or really chew your ear off if you're interested. But this is the first one in the trilogy. This one's not officially out yet, but I brought it. So this one is the second one, and then the third one's being written right now. But yeah, it's why choose queer romance with occult and sentient objects? And if you can't tell that I'm a D&D player, the sentient object would probably tick you off on that one.
Hi, I'm Amber Murray. I write paranormal romance and some contemporary, but none of my contemporary is out yet. Mine is a vampire prince fated mate story. Does take place partially in Michigan, is one of the main settings. Actually, part of the third book happens right here in Fenton. I only brought the first two with me to the panel, but I have 4 books. They are all out, and there is one novella out as well, but that's only on Kindle. So I like it.
That's it. Awesome. All right, I can talk loud. So my next question for all the authors here is, do your families know that you write romance? And was that an awkward conversation to have? Have they read any of your books with like steamy scenes? How does that work? Yeah. Okay.
So yes, everybody I know knows what I do. But my mom specifically loves to read every single thing that I write. And in the beginning, you know, they were steamy, but they weren't steamy. And then I wrote one that was much more steamy, much steamier. And I said, okay, but Mom, this one is a lot steamier. She goes, Heather, I've had 7 kids. I was like, okay. You know, so they all know, everybody knows. My husband's sitting at my table right now. They all know.
Well, they knew I wanted to be an author like way in advance, but I don't think anybody understood like what romance was in my family because we were always a church-going family. So when I had gotten a divorce, I was in the middle of a divorce, I couldn't afford an editor, and I wanted to come out with my second book, and my mom was like, well, I'll edit your book because she had like 2 MFAs, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead. But when she drove away with the book, I was like, oh my God, she's gonna read chapter 17. Oh my God, and I was just panicking for like 2 weeks. She finally called and she was like, this was the best book I've ever read. I was like, oh my God. So I was like, you know what, if my mama like it, I don't care what I write.
So my family knows that I write romance. And I don't know if they've chosen to read any of it, but my mother did decide to listen to one of the audio books that was featured in a podcast. And so I got this, I didn't even think about it. I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be on a podcast, it's gonna be on such and such a day. And they had featured one of the sexy scenes because they were talking about how authors, you know, find, you know, it's an awkward thing when you first read it out loud, let alone when you read it for a podcast. And my mother called me and she said, how many people did you tell? Well, it was kind of a social media thing, Mom. Kind of everyone. Does your father know? Well, he does now.
I come from the fan fiction world, so like I started writing fanfic and stuff that I didn't probably understand as a teenager. So my friends read my stuff. My husband is also sitting at my table right now. As it's never and I think the impression is always interesting to me. That people are like, oh, romance, we don't embrace it. Embrace what you like. You're not hurting anybody. It's just words on a page. Like it's not. As long as you're not doing damage to somebody, you're okay. Thank God there's a penis on the page. Forbid. But it's my friends read my stuff. That's the fun part about it too, because they come back and they're like, okay, why did you write that? I'm like, I don't know, it just came out. I don't know what happened. That's the fun part for me.
I don't have a husband. My 20-year-old daughter is sitting at my table. She has read the first book and half of the second. She got bored. She's 20. My mother is halfway through the 3rd book, and she's standing right there. My dad is working his way through the 2nd book, and honestly, that was more nerve-wracking than my mom reading anything. I think my whole family knows I write.
They've been reading her stuff since.
Yeah, she's been reading everything since fan fiction in 6th grade. So, but the more nerve-wracking was my dad, and he doesn't even. He's just like, okay, Anna, but also the dialogue. Can you help me write dialogue like that? I'm like, yeah, okay, I can help you with your dialogue.
That's really sweet.
All right, so this next question is for Michele. Out of all the paranormal creatures that you've written, what one do you relate to the most?
Well, I would have to say probably Amanda, who is has a bit of a red-headed temper. That's probably there's a little bit of me in all of the characters, but the heroine in all of my books. The girl always wins is the idea. So, which doesn't always happen to me in life, but you know, you would hope so. So I would say it was the heroine in this book. Her name is Amanda. She's sort of she has left her small town to get away from all of the craziness of her mother, and that is me. And then she moves to Chicago and has to come back to help her mother, who is ill, and just ends up falling in love. So, you know, that would be a lot like me. I did leave for a while, and then came back, and fell in love. And so, I would say it was probably Amanda.
My next question is for Heather. What is the trick to writing a swoon-worthy love interest?
She said, "Oh, you got a hard one." So for me, I don't actually find it that hard, only because maybe because yours are morally gray. You know? But for me, I don't find it hard. But it's I'm a woman. The majority of romance readers are women. There's a lot of men, but the majority are women. So I think that I can kind of guess what we want, you know? And so sometimes, and I'm glad my husband's at my table and not here because I can say this, that sometimes I just look, I've been married a very long time. And so sometimes I'll look at my husband and I'll be like, yeah, my character's not doing that, it's doing the exact opposite. So sometimes the trick is just, it's like, I've been married almost 30 years. It comes with the territory. So I think just number one, writing realistic, and then writing what I think other women want, which is probably the same thing that I want. Most of the time I get it, but nobody's perfect, so we don't get everything we want. And so that's usually what I do with my characters.